Magic the Gathering is a game that has long held a lot of love for me. It's something that I grew up playing ever since my mom brought home packs of cards from a yard sale or shoe boxes of cards that she found in rummage sales or other places. But lately it feels like it's a battle to enjoy this game half as much as I used to, and a lot of the affection that I feel for Magic the Gathering, well, let's just say the game has me looking a little bit like this. So, hello everybody, I'm Kyle Lott, and welcome to Desks and Dorks. A couple things. First and foremost, if you'd like to share, comment, subscribe, it really does help us out. Huge thank you to everybody who is already liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Literally, the response to the last couple of videos we have done has been absolutely tremendous, and I am eternally grateful for it, so thank you all so much for that. And again, if you would like to help us out in the most amazing way possible, you could do so by purchasing our games over at World of Game Design or over on our itch.io page if you like RPGs. So, let's talk a little bit about Magic. I know that we don't usually do Magic the Gathering content on this channel, and this is probably not going to become a reoccurring theme, but my general rule of thumb when I create a video is if it's something I'm feeling passionate about, I'm going to make a video about it, because A, it's kind of why I started the channel in the first place, and B, if it's passion and it's something that I love and it excites me, then it's probably going to make for better content for you guys. So let's talk a little bit about Magic first. So why do I feel like I need to fix Magic? And actually, before we get into this, I do want to say I am coming to this from a place of love and appreciation for Magic as a game. There was a time in my life where Magic the Gathering was probably the only reason I got out of bed. There were weeks where literally, if Magic wasn't happening, I was crushed. And there were weeks where if Magic was happening, I had a reason to get out of the house. So I am personally attached to and connected to this game. It is the reason I worked in the tabletop industry, and I wouldn't have the jobs that I have now or the opportunities that I enjoy now without Magic. So I am coming and critiquing from a place of love and appreciation for what Magic was and the hope for what Magic can be. Now let's talk about why we need to fix Magic the Gathering. First things first, let's talk about low community faith. Wizards of the Coast has made some pretty baffling decisions over the last, we'll say, 2 years. Some of them have been essentially divorcing themselves from friendly local game stores and dumping vast majorities of their sealed product onto Amazon, Target, or big box stores. They have divorced themselves from the judge program that has served them for so long, essentially meaning that it's really hard to have sanctioned or locally run events. There is a drop in event attendance in general. Both anecdotally, I know this from working with stores and working for stores and helping to put together events. Anecdotally, I can say that there has been drops in attendance, but also it seems like major events are also struggling. Star City Games, which runs the largest private tournament circuit, has actually said that they are struggling to make attendance numbers what they once were. In addition to that, major stores are dropping out of Magic entirely. Troll and Toad, one of the largest and longest running retailers in the country, announced this year they would be pulling all Magic the Gathering content from its store. This is a huge deal because they were one of the first supporters of Magic the Gathering and an original adopter of the game. And on top of that, we've got a lot of corporate scandals. So Hasbro/Wizards of the Coast cut several 1,000 jobs this year, right before Christmas, which was not super great. Wizards of the Coast sent the Pinkertons, yes, the honest-to-God Pinkertons, after a Magic the Gathering YouTuber when he was accidentally sent product from a licensed Wizards of the Coast retailer before it was out. So rather than handle that with a gentle touch, we handled it with the guys who literally used to shoot at striking coal miners, because that seemed like a smart call in general. There are a lot of things that have been going on, but lately it just feels like everywhere we look, Wizards of the Coast and the game itself are struggling. And so I want to hopefully address some of those issues here. Now, Magic the Gathering fans are passionate. I am passionate about the game as well, and so I feel the need that I have to state my qualifications. I am not just some random dude on the internet. I was a Magic the Gathering staff writer for about 2 years. I wrote a bunch of stuff for legitmtg.com, for draftmagic.com. I had an article on there, and it was gatheringmagic.com I had the article for. And I actually worked with Marlon Egoff, who won Grand Prix Boston, and a couple other Pro Tour grinders when I was a writer for draftmagic.com. So that was kind of neat. I'm also a top 300 legend player in Hearthstone. I know that those two are not necessarily the same thing, but again, I want to show that I have an understanding of how strategic card games work. I was also a pro in Gwent. I've been infinite in Marvel Snap. I do not run the world's most successful RPG publisher, but it was funny to put. But I do actually work as both a contractor or a demo member, or sometimes even an organizer for major board game publishers. So not just myself, but I have been either helping to run or running the convention presence for some pretty big players in the board game industry. And I've been playing Magic for about 20 years. So this is not coming, these critiques are not coming from somebody who has played the game twice and been very frustrated with it. They are coming from someone who has been an enfranchised player for a very long time, who is invested in the game, and although I do not play Magic anymore, it has since stopped being something that brings me joy. It is something that I still hold a lot of love and esteem for, and it is something that I am good enough at that I feel like I can speak on some of these issues with a degree of competency and, let's say, expertise. So, my challenges. There are a couple things and a couple caveats that I think we need to talk about before we get into this. I cannot say that we're going to print less products. Wizards of the Coast has said pretty publicly that they're not going to stop printing as many products as they do. They're, at the end of the day, they are a business, as much as we might want to pretend that that is not the case, and the money machine has to continue to print. I cannot charge less for existing products, so I cannot drop the price of booster packs. I will be offering incentives later on as part of my strategy, but again, these are incentives that already exist within Wizards' landscape. So again, I cannot charge less for new products. And finally, I cannot hire swaths of new people. As we mentioned before, there have been a long series of layouts for the good of the corporate shareholder. I disagree with these on a moral level and a political level, but however, if I'm going to put myself in the shoes of a business, particularly a business like this one, I cannot just immediately retcon a major decision like that. That feels like a disingenuous thing to do. And again, I am trying to approach this from the level of what would I do if I was one of the corporate executives over in the Wizards of the Coast office. So with those three challenges out of the way, let's talk about how we can fix Magic the Gathering. Number one is to differentiate your product. I know that there is a lot of people who really love Commander, and I am not particularly one of them, but I do think Commander is an important format. For those of you who are not in the know, and I'm going to basically take a few breaks as we continue this video to explain Magic the Gathering concepts to those of you who are more used to my RPG content. Hey, RPG fans, thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking. Well, you guys are great. So I'm going to try my best to explain some of these concepts if you're not familiar with them. Magic is traditionally played in formats. So the tentpole format for Magic the Gathering has been a 60-card constructed format called Standard. It is usually cards from the last few years are legal in that format. When you play a constructed format like Standard, there are things called sideboards. Those are 15-card side decks that you can take cards from and add into your deck in between games, and you'll usually play a best of 3. We're going to talk a couple times about different formats. Commander is right now the most popular format. It is a 100-card format where you can only have one of each card in the deck, and you have a legendary creature called a Commander, who, while they are a part of your 100-card deck, they're not shuffled in. They are actually part of something called the Command Zone, and then they can be cast from that zone and into the battlefield, essentially at any point during your turn. That's a general rule of thumb, and again, for those of you who are entrenched and experienced Magic players, I am going to be, not dumbing down, but I'm going to be simplifying some of the greater concepts of Magic, both for brevity and for the sake of this video. So Commander right now, as I have mentioned, is Magic the Gathering's premier format. It is the most popular format by a pretty wide margin. It is the format that makes Magic the Gathering the absolute most money. However, I don't think it should be the only format. Magic has long enjoyed a diverse range of ways to play, and that has helped to attract a number of different players. Now, you could simply say, oh, but Kyle, Commander makes the most money. That's why we continue to get Commander product. That's why Commander seems to get more things than every other format. And again, while I think that is true to an extent, if you notice anything about Magic the Gathering, it tends to go in cycles, and that corporate Wizards tends to support one format. For a while it was Draft, for a while it was Standard, for a while it was not really Modern, but there was like a half a second where it was, and right now it's Commander. And usually those formats enjoy larger attendance and larger turnouts. So while Commander is indeed the most profitable format in Magic at the moment, I would argue that some of that is due to the large amount of corporate support that Commander enjoys. So what I want is for Wizards of the Coast to diversify their game again and to encourage other people from multiple communities to get a chance to play. So how do we do that? The first thing I would do is I would allow Legacy to be played once again at professional events. Legacy is a format much like Standard that's a 60-card deck with a 15-card sideboard. However, Legacy goes from whatever the current product of Magic is, all the way to the beginning of Magic's history. It does feature a pretty robust list of banned cards that have been banned or removed from the format to help make things a little more strategic and a little less high variance. Wizards recently removed Legacy from their professional events. There are two problems with this. If you want to continue to build up interest in the professional scene and competitive Magic in general, you need people who are invested. While Legacy players do not make up a large majority of Magic's fan base, they do make up some of its most rabid fans. Again, this means that while you're not going to be able to count on having 150 people that are all Legacy players show up to an event, you can, for the most part, if you run a Legacy event, expect 8 to 10 people, the same 8 to 10 people, to be there pretty much every time. This is kind of a huge deal because if you want to continue to reinforce this format, it's nice to have those players interested. The other big thing, and the largest complaint that I have heard from both people I know and from people that I have worked with in the professional Magic space, is that it kind of kills composition for team events. In a team event, usually 3 players will get together and each one will play a deck in a different format. For the longest time, Legacy was included as a part of the team format. This was awesome, and it allowed people who were very good at this format, who already had the cards, to help contribute to their friends. It was kind of a cool thing to do. So allowing people to continue to play Legacy at professional events, I think, is the first step that we can make to allowing a greater diversification of Magic's formats. Vintage, much like Legacy, is a format that takes the most recent Magic product and goes all the way back to the beginning of Magic's history. Unlike Legacy, the banned list doesn't really exist within Vintage, so you are allowed to play Magic's most degenerate, powerful, backbreaking cards. There are 2 things that are usually true about Vintage. 1, Vintage is incredibly expensive. The cheapest Vintage decks that I have seen are like $2,000 to like $3,000. I think you can maybe put together Vintage Burn for like something like $1,400 at the last stat I checked. And they can go upwards of like 30, 40, 50, 60. I've seen some that are 120 grand. So basically you're looking at the price of a used car to the mortgage on a small home. Now, here's the thing. In addition to being incredibly expensive, Vintage is also incredibly fun. It allows for a diverse range of strategic expression. It is fast-paced, and it does all kinds of interesting stuff. If you like competitive Magic, or if you want to play a game at one of the highest skill ceilings possible, Vintage is actually one of the best ways to do that. If we want to allow people to come into this, it is important that we make it affordable, and I think the best way to increase the love of Vintage is to allow for proxied Vintage events. Now again, you might be saying to yourself, Kyle, there's no way that they would allow this. If you look at what's going on already within the Vintage community, which, much like Legacy, is a smaller community, but again, like Legacy, is a very active and verbose community, they're already allowing for this at really high tier, locally created events. And it would be nice to see Wizards tap into the community of these 2 play sets, these 2 player bases, and allow them to play the game the way that they would like to be played. It would go a long way to help continuing to build some of that community trust in Wizards of the Coast, and it might help new players get enfranchised into the game. The other thing that we can do is we can lean into Pauper. Pauper, much like the other formats, is 60 cards, 1v1, a 15-card sideboard. Unlike the other ones, however, Pauper exclusively uses common cards, which means that the most expensive card that you will ever spend for in Pauper, as of right now, in like one of the top tier decks, you might shell out $4 for a card. The majority of them are anywhere from 15 to 35 cents. Pauper, much like Vintage, is incredibly skill intensive, allows for a diverse range of strategic expression, and on top of that is dirt freaking cheap to play. However, while Wizards does have a Pauper rules community, and it also has a couple other things that it's trying to do, these feel like half measures for a community that, much like Legacy and Vintage, is incredibly verbose, but unlike Legacy and Vintage, is actually a lot larger and seems to be growing. Wizards needs to actually put these pauper events into the Pro Tour or into major Magic Fest events where they can actually enjoy it. I understand that these decks are cheap, but if you want people to get interested in the game, allowing them to say, hey, instead of spending $200 on a top tier competitive deck, being able to spend, I don't know, $15 on a top tier competitive deck would be a wonderful way of encouraging that new growth. We're going to talk about incentivizing Standard later, but I do want to mention it now. Standard has for the long time been a major tentpole format of Magic the Gathering, and it needs to be incentivized. However, we're going to talk about the next thing first, which is please stop promoting products direct to Modern. Modern, much like Legacy and Vintage, is what we would refer to as an eternal format, which means it uses cards from way back in Magic's history up to the current day. Unlike Legacy and Vintage, it doesn't go all the way back. However, it was a popular alternative to those formats because it was non-rotating. This means that those cards, once they are legal in Modern, are almost always going to be legal in Modern, without ever rotating out or becoming obsolete like they would in a format like Standard. Now, the issue with this was that Modern was often seen as a great investment and a cheaper, more cost-effective alternative to those other formats. Then Magic the Gathering and Wizards started to print new products that were legal only in Modern, and because they wanted to sell those products, they made the cards in them very powerful. This essentially means that whenever a new Modern-focused set or Modern-focused product arrives, it kicks out a lot of the pre-existing decks, and it forces what was once a non-rotating format into a sort of rotation where you have to sell some of your old cards because the new ones, the shinier ones, are often better. Wizards is already going to continue to promote and make direct products for other formats. And again, I said I wasn't going to cut the number of products that are going to be there. I just think that we can shift them away from Modern and to other formats to allow that format some time to grow. And if you don't believe me, there was a recent MTG statistic that they did. Modern Horizons 2, by the way, is one of the newest, quote-unquote, direct-to-Modern sets. Cards from that set make up 30% of every single top 8 deck in Modern. 30%. That is not good. That is not healthy. That means that if you're not using those cards or finding those cards or purchasing those cards, you're at a disadvantage. And that really sucks, and it actually did a lot to A, make Magic a little bit less enjoyable, and B, encourage people not to play this format. So, let's move on to some other stuff. We need player incentives. Standard, like I said before, needs a reason for people to get invested. And again, the thing about Standard is, unlike the other ones, it's a rotating format. Only the cards from the last couple years are ever going to be legal in Standard. This means that as new products come out, you are forced to re-buy new cards and change your decks. This is difficult to keep up with financially. However, it does allow Standard to remain fresh and interesting because it is ever-changing. However, if we want to incentivize this and continue to make this the tentpole format, we need people to have a reason to come in and play that. Magic the Gathering Arena is Magic the Gathering's existing digital client. It is free to download, and for the most part, you can earn rewards, aka card packs and decks, for free. Wizards has been, over the course of the last couple years, incredibly stingy with the rewards that they give out for Arena. So for example, if I pay $10 to go and participate in an in-person event, chances are I might get lucky, I might win a pack of cards, which in addition to having some very real cards, which are worth something, I get an Arena code. You might be like, wow, you spent $10, 3 hours of your time, you won a tournament. What do you get with that Arena code? You get one pack. One pack of cards. That's all you get. Seriously. It does not cost Wizards of the Coast anything to give out additional digital packs on Arena. It is ridiculous that we have to talk about this right now. You can give more than just one digital pack. If people are coming in to play Standard, the rewards for that, if you want Standard to become a tentpole format the way that it was before, should be robust. So for example, if I come in and I spend 3 hours of my life and $10 playing a game or a tournament that I'm not necessarily guaranteed to even win anything in, give me 3 packs on Magic the Gathering Arena. Don't give me 1, give me like 3 to 4. Give me unique decks. Give me a special cosmetic. Every single month, if you come to a Standard event, guess what? You get a special set of in-game Magic the Gathering sleeves for your digital deck, or a special in-game digital avatar. This does not actually cost us anything else. Wizards of the Coast has artists and graphic designers who are already salaried, which means that if I am running this company, you can make this part of that employee's existing responsibilities. Just say, hey, once a month, it is your job, art person who's really talented and definitely should not ever be replaced with AI. I hate when people keep saying that. Stop talking about it. Please make us something cool and something interesting for players who come in and do standard. And again, I know that you can do this because this is what I do for my company. When I negotiate with an artist, we have a set amount. I say, here are your responsibilities. And again, that includes stuff that I'm going to give away to backers or to people who come see us at a convention, something along those lines. It's already included in what I'm spending on that artist and on the work that they produce. This is something that Wizards of the Coast can very easily do to help increase interest in this format. It's not hard. Finally, let's talk about draft. Drafting is a format in which you open a 15-card booster pack, you take a card, you pass it to the left. You do the same thing with a second pack, except this time you pass it to the right, and then once that pack is done, you take a card out of those 15 and you pass it to the left. When everyone has done this, you sit at a table with 7 other players, you build a 40-card deck out of the cards that you drafted. Draft has a reputation for being not only incredibly skill-intensive and interesting, but incredibly asymmetric. No draft that I have done has ever been like the last draft that I've done, even if it's in the same set. However, there's an interesting caveat here. Draft has gotten more expensive because the price of booster packs has gone up. Here's the issue. Draft, because it is so skill-intensive, right? Draft is, a little pricey now. The other problem is that because it is so skill intensive, you can lose a lot, right? It sucks to pay $20, $25, sometimes even $30, $35 for a limited draft event and go 0-3. If you're not an enfranchised player like myself, or somebody who is specialized in limited when they were actually playing the game at a professional level, then it can be discouraging. So here's my thing. If you go draft in person, you get a free draft on Arena. Again, this does not cost us anything. The digital packs are free for Wizards to just give to people. If anything, this helps increase the amount of people coming in and buying real packs from real stores, and it increases the number of players on the digital client. That number of players might eventually spend additional money on the client, thus generating additional revenue. Here's why this helps. One, it makes us feel like we're getting our money's worth. If I spend $25 on a draft, right, I'm getting 3 packs, I'm getting 3 hours of fun. That's awesome. That's essentially the price of a dinner, or of not a dinner, of a bucket of popcorn and a movie ticket. However, if I go 0-3 and I'm frustrated, but I had a good time and I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm learning and I'm getting a feel for this new format, I can take the free draft ticket that you have given me and I can immediately apply the lessons I've learned in person directly to the digital client. This is a really interesting way to not only make people feel like they're getting a little more bang for their buck, but to help train them in a format that they might naturally struggle with, and thus increasing attendance at these events. Limited Magic is my favorite way to play Magic the Gathering, and I think this is a really easy and a really simple change. But let's talk about the last one. So we talked about Commander before, but I think more than anything else in Commander's favor, not the vast army of people who are making content for it, although there are a lot of great content creators, not the degree for creative expression in deck building and strategy, but I think the reason that Commander has succeeded is that there is an easy on-ramp for new Commander players. All you have to do to get into Commander is go to your store, say, I would like to get into Commander, and usually they will point you to a wall of starter decks. These starter decks, depending on the card quality, range in about $25 to as much as $60, $65, $70. But again, they give you about 70, 80% of what you need to be competitive at a table. There are entire YouTube channels dedicated to saying, hey, swap 4 cards out of your 100-card Commander deck, and now all of a sudden, it's basically ready to hang with some of the better decks with very few changes. That's really interesting and really compelling, and you would think the other formats in Magic have a product like that. The answer to that question is they don't. So Wizards have experimented with things called challenger decks for a little bit, but these were generally poorly constructed, overly priced and not very good out of the box. And so what happened is if you were a new player and you want to come into Standard or Legacy or Pauper, whatever, you have to piece together a deck from single cards. And there is some love for that. There is some enjoyment. There is in my opinion, a small, not insignificant amount of joy in piecing together a deck or a strategy that you're passionate about, letting it come to life, and really building something that you enjoy. However, not everybody wants to do this, especially when a lot of times it feels like you're putting together a complex geometry equation just to build a deck. For the love of all that's good and holy, make competitive decks. Ignore the secondary market, because Wizards of the Coast's official legal stance is that they don't look at the prices other people sell their cards for. Okay, cool. Then let's act like that then, shall we? Charge $25 for a Pauper deck. Right now, if I want to buy a Pauper deck that is tier 1, the top of the top, the cream of the crop, it will cost me anywhere from $35 to $40. This is totally fine, totally reasonable. But Wizards of the Coast, I know you can print this at $25. Make it a 60-card deck, give me a 15-card sideboard, do 8 of them. It's the best 8 decks in Pauper right now. If people want to get involved, that's their in. $25 is a more than reasonable to get invested in the hobby. $25 lets me absolutely know if I'm going to love this deck and love Magic. And if I don't like my $25 deck, that's fine. It's $25. Again, that's the price of a movie ticket. That's the price of a reasonable meal at the Olive Garden. You're not breaking the bank with this. If you want people to get invested in Pioneer or Standard, Pioneer is another format, much like Modern and Legacy, that has additional legality. I'm not going to go into it. Just know that $50 for a totally reasonable deck is a good call. I recently participated in a Pioneer challenge. I don't like the format particularly much. I thought it was fine. It's not like I don't like it. I didn't hate it. And my deck was good, but there were like 2 or 3 other decks that we bought because the challenge was you buy a challenger deck and then over time you were allowed to buy booster packs to upgrade it. My deck won the tournament basically with no upgrades. I played the Blue-White Spirits deck out of the box and that was totally great. But my friend built the Phoenix deck, which was a deck that required 4 of a certain card to be really good, and they only put 2 in the deck. And we're all sitting there scratching our heads going, what? Why is the namesake of this deck, the deck is called Phoenix. Why is there only 2 of the 4 Phoenixes needed in the deck? Wizards, make a comprehensive deck. Please, for the love of God. I'm not going to go deeper into these things for this one. Just know this is the price point these decks need to be at. These decks need to have a full 60-card deck, a full 15-card sideboard, and in terms of competitive strength, they need to be a 7 or an 8 out of 10 out of the box. Period. What Wizards of the Coast needs to do to continue to drum up new players is to, instead of making a convoluted process, or instead of relying on their, I'll be honest, pretty helpful community who has gone through a lot of stuff to try to make it work for new players who want to get invested, instead of relying on those 2 things, create a product that is consistent, that is consistently good, and is affordable, so that when someone wants to get in on a format, all a new or enfranchised player has to do is say, take one of those decks, make the purchase, it's a one and done thing, and then they can see how far deep the rabbit hole goes, because once people play Magic, there's a general tendency that they keep wanting to play Magic, and we are holding ourselves back by not having an on-ramp for the other formats. It is ridiculous that we have a bajillion products and not a consistent and consistently good new player product, new on-ramp product for Magic the Gathering. It's ridiculous, and frankly speaking, there isn't an excuse here in this avenue or here in this arena. With that being said, those are how I would fix Magic the Gathering. I hope you all liked this video. Again, if you did, like, share, comment, subscribe. You can, support us, help us out by getting our games. I know I got a little bit passionate there at the end, but I want you to know that this is coming from a place of love and appreciation. Magic the Gathering has been a large part of my life, essentially since I can remember, and I don't think I would be the person I am today nor do I think I would have enjoyed the personal or professional opportunities that I have without Magic the Gathering. And so, much love to the people who work on it. I know I offered some harsh critique, I think, but again, I think it's fair critique, and it comes from a place of wanting this game and the community that surrounds this game to be successful, because I think Magic the Gathering is good for the hobby, and I think Magic the Gathering is good just for nerds in general. But again, there are some pretty glaring errors, and I think if we don't fix them in the next 10 years, Magic could be in a weird and maybe less than advantageous spot. But until next time, I'm Kyle for Desks and Dorks. Thank you all so much for watching. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.